Has this ever happened to you? You're out on a date, and he's attentive, engaging, and seems utterly captivated. The connection is electric, the laughter effortless. Then the night ends. He says all the right things, a promise of a future text, a next meeting. You wait. A day goes by, then two. The text is brief, distant. He vanishes into the ether. You wonder what went wrong. You begin to obsess over the last conversation, picking apart every word, every gesture, searching for the flaw that made him disappear. You might think he wasn't interested, that he found someone better, or that he was just a player. And in some cases, that's true. But what if the reason he vanished had nothing to do with you? What if his sudden retreat was a form of self-preservation, a primal flight from something he couldn't control? Not because you were too much, but because you were just enough. Too much of a threat to the carefully constructed fortress of his own unexamined self. Most women have been conditioned to see this kind of withdrawal as a rejection of their worth. We're taught to analyze his behavior, to find our own shortcomings. But what if we've been asking the wrong questions? What if the real question isn't why did he leave, but what did he see in me that he was not prepared to face within himself? This is the great secret of the anima, the feminine archetype within a man's psyche. Jung believed that the anima is the soul, the inner woman, the repository of his emotional life and his capacity for deep connection. For many men, this inner world is a wild, untamed land, walled off by the ego's rigid defenses and the masculine archetype's pressure to be strong, rational, and in control. The anima is often a source of immense power, but also of profound vulnerability. When a man encounters a woman who embodies an aspect of his own unintegrated anima, he doesn't just see a person. He sees a mirror, a living, breathing reflection of the part of himself he has neglected, suppressed, or even feared. This isn't about you being the one. It's about you being a catalyst. You are not a solution. You are a problem to his ego. You represent the very qualities he desperately needs to integrate: emotional depth, a connection to the subconscious, authenticity, and the courage to feel. When he sees you, he sees a woman who is not afraid to feel her emotions, who has done her own shadow work, and who carries herself with a quiet, magnetic integrity. This isn't about being conventionally beautiful or charming. It's about a deeper energetic resonance, a frequency that bypasses his conscious mind and speaks directly to his soul. It's the silent scream of his unlived life, a call from the depths of his being that his ego desperately tries to silence. The initial attraction isn't just lust, it's a profound recognition. He's drawn to you like a moth to a flame because you represent the missing piece of his own wholeness. He's unconsciously attempting to merge with you, to absorb your essence, in the desperate hope of becoming whole himself. But he doesn't have the conscious framework to understand this. He only knows that you feel different, that being around you stirs something ancient and powerful within him. The experience is exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. His old life, his old patterns, his old ego, identity, feel threatened by the sheer force of your being. This is where the tension begins. The ego, sensing a potential dissolution of its power, erects its defenses. It whispers a litany of rationalizations. She's too intense. It's moving too fast. I'm not ready for something so serious. It's a classic flight or fight response. A panicked retreat from the very thing that could make him whole. The average man, uninitiated in the depths of his own psyche, will choose flight every time. He will run from the mirror you hold up to. His soul, he will ghost, He will pull back. He will create distance. This is not a rejection of you. It is a rejection of his own potential. The woman who understands this truth is freed from the need for validation. She understands that his disappearance is not a reflection of her worth, but a measure of his own inner resistance. She stops obsessing over what she did wrong and begins to see his withdrawal for what it is, a sign of his own emotional immaturity and lack of courage. He wasn't afraid of losing you. He was afraid of finding himself. He wasn't rejecting you. He was rejecting the call to individuation. The woman who haunts a man's dreams isn't a mystery to be solved. She is a symbol of the profound transformation he must undergo if he is ever to become truly whole. A man's retreat is not a judgment on her, but a reflection of his own unresolved internal conflict. It is the ego's frantic last stand against the overwhelming tide of the soul. He wasn't rejecting her so much as he was rejecting the call to individuation. The woman who understands this truth is freed from the need for validation. She understands that his disappearance is not a reflection of her worth, but a measure of his own inner resistance. She stops obsessing over what she did wrong and begins to see his withdrawal for what it is, a sign of his own emotional immaturity and lack of courage. He wasn't afraid of losing her. He was afraid of finding himself. He wasn't rejecting her. He was rejecting the call to individuation. The woman who haunts a man's dreams isn't a mystery to be solved. She is a symbol of the profound transformation he must undergo if he is ever to become truly whole. The true haunting is not a spell she casts, but a seed she plants. This seed is a memory of her wholeness, a ghost of what is possible. He may consciously forget her, distract himself with other pursuits, or even rationalize his flight as a good decision. But in the quiet hours of the night, when the ego's defenses are down, her image returns. She appears in his dreams, not as a lover, but as a symbolic figure, muse, a queen, a powerful force of nature. She is the embodiment of his unlived life, a phantom limb aching with the possibility of what he could have become. She is the unignorable whisper of his soul, a haunting reminder that he is not yet complete. This is the anima at its most potent, a silent, persistent pressure from within that compels a man to face himself. The woman who can trigger this process does so not through manipulation or strategy, but through her own authentic being. She is a woman who has done her own shadow work, who is not afraid of her own depths, and who carries a sense of innate worth that is independent of external validation. She becomes a powerful archetype in his psyche precisely because she embodies the qualities he lacks. She is the shadow he needs to integrate. Perhaps he is a man who relies on logic and control. She represents intuition and emotional flow. He is a man who avoids vulnerability. She represents strength through vulnerability. She is not a person to be possessed, but a symbol to be understood. His initial attraction was not a desire for a relationship with her, but an unconscious desire for a relationship with himself. He was drawn to the parts of her that were missing from his own soul. He wanted to absorb her light to fill his own darkness, but the process was too painful. To truly integrate her essence, he would have to face his own shadow, to confront the parts of himself he has long denied. This is the arduous, terrifying work of individuation. The man who flees from this woman is ultimately a man running from his own potential. He is content to remain a fragment, to live a life of comfortable mediocrity rather than risk the pain of becoming whole. This is a tragic choice, but it is his choice alone. The woman who is the catalyst in this process must understand that. Her role is not to save him, but to stand as a beacon of what is possible. Her power lies not in her ability to make him stay, but in her ability to let him go. She must detach with stoic grace, understanding that his journey is his and his alone. She cannot do his shadow work for him. She cannot force him to confront his anima. She can only be the mirror, and if he chooses to look away, that is his own suffering to bear. In this way, her rejection becomes her greatest act of empowerment. She learns that her value is not contingent on a man's ability to see it. She realizes that her presence in his life was a gift, a moment of profound cosmic synchronicity intended to awaken him. If he rejects the gift, it does not diminish its value. The haunting is not a curse she inflicts, but a consequence of his own unexamined life. It is the natural result of an encounter with a soul that is more evolved, more integrated, and more courageous than his own. She becomes the ghost in his machine, the memory that will not fade, the reminder of the path not taken. This is not her burden to carry, but his. Her freedom comes from the realization that the man who ghosts her isn't a threat to her worth. He is a testament to her power. Her presence becomes a haunting not because she is a ghost, but because she is a mirror. This is a crucial distinction. A ghost is a remnant of the past, a memory that clings to an old reality. A mirror, however, is a reflection of the present, a relentless reminder of what is. When a man flees from a woman who embodies his anima, he is not just running from her. He is running from himself, from the very core of his being that yearns for integration and wholeness. The woman's power, therefore, is not in her ability to hold him captive, but in her capacity to reflect his own truth without flinching. She is the catalyst for a kind of psycho-spiritual crisis, a moment where the ego's carefully constructed narrative is challenged by the raw, untamed power of the soul. He sees her, and in that instant, he sees his own unlived potential, the life of depth, emotion, and authenticity he has long suppressed. This confrontation with the self is a terrifying prospect for the uninitiated. The ego, built on a foundation of control and predictable patterns, perceives this as a threat to its very existence. It will deploy all its defenses, denial, rationalization, and ultimately, flight. The man who ghosts is not a villain. He is a man in a state of psychological panic. He is a man who, at a subconscious level, knows he is standing on the precipice of a profound transformation, and he is not ready to jump. He would rather retreat to the familiar, if hollow, comfort of his old life than face the unknown territory of his own heart. The woman who is left behind often feels a profound sense of confusion and self-doubt. She may internalize his flight as a rejection of her own worth, a sign that she is somehow too much or not good enough. But this is the great illusion that must be shattered. The woman's journey from confusion to clarity is her own heroic quest. She must cease to ask, "What did I do wrong?" and begin to ask, "What truth did I embody that he was not ready to face?" This shift in perspective is her liberation. It moves her from a position of powerlessness to one of profound self-authority. She stops chasing his validation and starts validating herself. She understands that his disappearance is not a measure of her deficiency, but a testament to her wholeness, her integrity, her emotional intelligence, and her courage become so potent that they act as a natural filter, sifting out those who are not on a parallel path of growth. The man who cannot handle her depth is simply a man who has not yet plumbed his own. The emotional freedom that comes from this realization is the true prize. It is a form of stoic detachment, a deep knowing that her worth is not a commodity to be approved of or rejected by another person. She can look at his retreat with a kind of compassionate objectivity, understanding that his journey is his own. She no longer feels the need to fix him, to save him, or to make him see her value. She simply allows him to be on his path, while she continues on her own. This emotional sovereignty is her greatest strength. She is no longer haunted by his absence. She is empowered by her presence. Her own inner world becomes her sanctuary, a place of peace and self-acceptance that no external force can disturb. When a man encounters a woman who is this emotionally sovereign, he encounters a force he cannot possess. He can only choose to rise to her level or retreat from it. The woman who is the anima's muse is not waiting for him to return. She is busy building a life of purpose, meaning, and joy. A life that is so rich and fulfilling that it leaves no room for the obsessive. Rumination over a man who chose to run. She becomes a symbol of his unlived potential, not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. This is the great irony. Her power over his psyche grows precisely at the moment she releases her need to control the outcome. Her detachment is her magic, and her self-worth is the unbreakable spell that keeps her free. This realization marks the great turning point in her own individuation journey. The woman who once felt powerless in the face of a man's retreat now understands that she holds the ultimate power, the power of self-ownership. She no longer seeks to be understood by him. She seeks to understand herself. She turns her gaze inward, using his flight not as a source of pain, but as a mirror for her own growth. What did his behavior trigger in her? A fear of abandonment, a desire for external validation. By examining these reactions, she can begin the profound work of healing her own wounds. His absence becomes an invitation to a deeper relationship with herself, a relationship based on unwavering self-love and radical self-acceptance. The man who haunts her dreams transforms from a source of anxiety into a symbol of her own spiritual awakening. She becomes an alchemist, turning the lead of disappointment into the gold of wisdom. She understands that her emotional regulation is her greatest asset. Instead of succumbing to the temptation of chasing him, of begging for clarity, or of lashing out in anger, she chooses a different path. She practices the stoic art of emotional distance, recognizing that she cannot control his actions, only her reactions. She detaches from the outcome, releasing her desire for a certain conclusion. This detachment is not coldness. It is the ultimate form of It says, "My peace of mind is not for sale, and I will not barter it for the approval of a man who is not brave enough to face his own soul." This is a silent but powerful statement of her worth. The man, meanwhile, is still on his own journey. He may find temporary solace in other connections, but the haunting remains. Her image is now a persistent guest in his subconscious, a phantom reminder of the wholeness he abandoned. He will compare other women to her, not in a conscious, malicious way, but in a subtle, unconscious search for that same energetic charge. But he will never find it, because he is not looking for a woman. He is looking for himself. He is looking for the part of his own anima that you so powerfully embodied. And until he does the work to integrate that part of his psyche, he will remain unfulfilled, a wanderer lost in a desert of his own making. The woman who is truly sovereign does not feel sorry for him. She feels a kind of profound, but distant, empathy. She understands his struggle, but she knows it is not her burden to carry. Her emotional freedom is not the absence of feeling, but the absence of suffering. She will feel the initial pang of disappointment, the brief flicker of what-if scenarios. But she will not linger there. She will feel the emotions, acknowledge them, and then release them. This is the difference between a woman who is a victim of circumstance and a woman who is the master of her own emotional landscape. She is no longer defined by what a man does or does not do. She is defined by her own integrity, her own courage, and her own commitment to her growth. She becomes the very thing he was afraid of, a powerful, autonomous soul, living a life of purpose, and radiating an inner peace that is anathema to a mind built on anxiety and unlived potential. In the end, she realizes that the haunting is not a punishment for him, but a gift. It is the universe's way of forcing him to confront his own shadow. It is the echo of a profound truth he cannot escape. And for the woman who has gone through this process, her experience is not a lesson in heartbreak, but a masterclass in silence. She knows, with a quiet and unshakable certainty, that her value is not up for debate. The man who ghosts her isn't rejecting her. He is simply proving that he is not yet ready to meet her on her level. The journey from feeling haunted to becoming the one who haunts is the essence of true female empowerment. It is a transformation from a state of external validation to one of internal sovereignty. She is no longer defined by the attention she receives, but by the integrity she embodies. This is the final stage of her metamorphosis, where the pain of rejection is fully transmuted into the power of self-worth. She understands that the man's flight was not a personal affront, but a necessary event in her own evolution. It was the moment that forced her to stop looking for her value in another person's eyes and to begin to cultivate it from within. Her magnetism is no longer an outward projection of need, but a quiet, centered force that emanates from her core. She does not need to chase, to perform, or to prove herself. Her very being becomes an invitation, a silent call to anyone who is brave enough to meet her at her level. She has integrated her own shadow, faced her own fears, and forged an inner world so rich and meaningful that the external world becomes a bonus, not a necessity. She is no longer in a state of lack. She is in a state of abundance. And it is this abundance, this overflowing cup of self-love and inner peace that becomes her greatest attraction. The man who once fled is now haunted by the memory of a woman who was a mirror to his soul. He sees her now, not as an object of desire, but as a symbol of his own lost potential. She has become an archetype in his psyche, a phantom of what could have been. And this haunting is not an act of her will, but a natural consequence of his choice. He chose the path of least resistance, and the universe has now made him pay the price in the form of a persistent, nagging sense of incompleteness. He will forever carry the ghost of a woman he was not brave enough to love, because he was not brave enough to love himself. For the woman, her journey culminates in a profound sense of emotional freedom. She is no longer tethered to the whims of men or the expectations of society. Her inner peace is non-negotiable. She has learned that the only person she needs to impress is herself, and the only love she needs to secure is her own. The man's rejection was not an end, it was a beginning. It was the moment she stopped asking for permission to be whole and started claiming her own wholeness. She is the master of her own destiny, the queen of her own kingdom, and the author of her own story. Her heart is no longer a fragile object to be guarded, but an open, powerful force that radiates love and light without fear of being extinguished. The man who haunts her dreams is a symbol of her past. The woman who haunts his is a symbol of her present and future. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.